It's Holistic Harmony Javi, your holistic peak performance coach. It's a great day to be grateful. Welcome back to High Vibe Live. Today's topic, activating abundance. Here's the thing, abundance is not just how much money is in your account. This is a common misconception. A lot of people think abundance is tied to finances. It is not only tied to finances. There's actually underlying currents that when you there are underlying currents that when you tap into it, they increase your financial abundance. But we're not only just talking about finances. We're talking about all the ways that we can be abundant and small little things that you can do, as well as just an amazing conversation. So I'm super excited to have Alex here. I'm going to go ahead and add him to the... And we'll get jamming. We'll get talking on all these amazing conversations. Here we go. Waiting for Alex. My brother.
Ha ha ha! What's up, bro?
Long time coming.
How are you? Excited to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to have you, brother. I'm excited to have you talk about all the magic that is abundance, man. I was just telling the people right before they joined that abundance is more than just finances and stuff. But I want to go ahead and dive into it. But before we do, would love to get on a collective sync. Couple breaths.
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it.
Let's hit it.
Feel free to follow along, everybody. So we're going to go ahead, close our eyes if you haven't already. Deep breath into the nose. Hold for just a moment. Letting go through the mouth. 2 more in through the nose. Hold. Letting out a big sigh. Last one, really push that belly out into the nose. Hold. Nice big smile on your face. And let it go. All right. Let's get into it. So for anybody that does not know my man Alex, it's hard to describe you, man, because you wear so many hats, but Alex is one of the most ambitious, tenacious entrepreneurs that I have ever had the pleasure of meeting. He is somebody who not only knows what you need to get done, but also how to do it and the time frame that it'll take. So for any of you guys that are looking to either launch a small business, just refine your small business, this is the guy to talk to for everything: marketing, branding, strategies, programs, processes, the whole nine.
The whole gamut.
The whole gamut. You got the whole gamut under lock, man. So I just want to thank you, man, for coming on to this topic, and I would love for you to just relay back. How was it that abundance became kind of your thing? Like, I have my thing with the whole Jaguar. Let's talk about it. Like when you really started to step into that and the story behind it.
Well, the truth is it kind of came to me, right? I've always kind of had this way of being. And just through that, a lot of people would say to me, like, hey, man, you're like super abundant. Like, like you're always talking about like, this and that, you have such an abundant attitude. And I never really thought of it that way. I just kind of thought of it as the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And through that, finally my brother said to me, "You're Abundance Alex." And I said, "I guess I am Abundance Alex." He said, "Why don't you call yourself that?" I said, "Yeah, why don't I?" So, I started calling myself that, and it really, really resonated with pretty much everybody who heard it. And, I think the reason why it resonated is because it's a perfect match,
Mm-hmm.
The more you get to know me, the more we get to have deeper conversations, the more it starts to really show. And I like to think that it starts to rub off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like my favorite part is, challenging others to be like a little bit less of the lack mentality and a little bit more of the abundant mentality, you know? So that's kind of the short story behind it. The longer story behind it is, I guess it started in childhood for me. Um, you know, my parents got divorced pretty early. And during that divorce, their attention was not 100% on myself and my brother, right? And I had to learn to look around and acquire things for myself, like whether that was attention from others,
Mm,
whether that was confidence, whether that was food, whatever it was, if clothes, I
mm,
basically started looking around and saying, like, well, how can I be a grown up, an adult, you know?
mhm, mhm.
And just testing things and doing things, right? I'm a big doer.
Right.
So through doing, I just started to realize that I could have whatever I want.
Mm,
And the only thing that would ever stop me was me.
mm.
So that's the backstory.
I love that. I remember one time that you were with your son, little Alex, and you guys were at the playground, and he was just kind of almost standing there in the middle, letting people come to him, and you said, "Yes, let them come to you." Can you explain to us? Can you explain to us why that's abundant AF?
Yeah.
Why that attitude itself is abundance?
Yeah, so, abundance, like you said, is an attitude. It's also, in my belief, very much a mindset, right? And
Mm,
it's understanding that you have a lens of the world, right? And when you put that abundant lens on, you start to realize that you have everything that you need always right in front of you, right?
mm,
In that particular moment that you describe, he was practicing abundance, right? By just being himself.
mm,
Later in life, I came to realize that just being me was value enough, right?
mm,
And that, but by nature of my vibration, it would attract people directly to me through that vibrational field.
mm,
So when he was doing that, I was like, yeah, dude, I really want you to stand there and experience attraction, in its finest,
mm.
just by you being you, because he attracts things to him by the nature of his being,
Yeah.
and to allow that to happen and manifest for him so that he starts to have that ideology ingrained in him,
Mm,
to me was incredibly important and incredibly beautiful.
mm, I love that. And it's interesting because I remember having a conversation with you about your way of networking when you walk into a room. I would love for you to just like kind of talk about that because I see parallels between what your son was doing and what you do when you walk into a room full of
Mm,
important people that you want to get to know them, they know you, that kind of
for
thing.
sure, for sure. Yeah, I love how you remember fucking everything. So yeah, I mean, the way that I will kind of introduce myself is energetically, right?
mm,
Um, I've learned through the course of my life that my most purest channel of communication is just presence, right?
mm, mm,
So yeah, when I walk into a room, let's say I'm networking, I think I was telling you about when I was networking in the city more.
right.
You come up the elevator, the doors open, and boom, there's a crowd of people that you've never met before.
Mm,
Walking into that crowd of people and just kind of doing it slowly, just kind of looking around, taking in the environment, breathing it in, making eye contact with people, smiling, allowing
mm,
them to know that you're there,
mm,
right? Without having to say anything is incredibly powerful, right?
mm,
At that moment, when there is nothing said, the only thing that they can do is feel your presence,
mm,
right? And when they feel your presence, they feel invited. They feel curious. They want to know more, you
mm,
know? And then they come to you, and conversations just start to happen naturally, right?
mm,
And that's pretty much how I do my networking. I just kind of walk in and
mm,
walk around, stand there, smile. If I see somebody that I know, I love to go over and open up that conversation with them as well. And
mm,
you probably know this about me because we've been in crowds, but I love inviting other people into
mm,
conversations,
mm,
especially if I see somebody standing over there, like with nobody else talking to them. Come on over this conversation. Here's what we're talking about, like,
mm.
is this interesting to you? Of course it is.
Yeah, that inclusive attitude is huge, man. And one thing that I love that you spoke about was moving slowly. I
Hmm.
think whenever we get into, or I'll speak for myself, from a former kind of self, I would be very anxious and would either run straight to the bar or, get on my phone and kind of go to hug the wall, so to speak. And what sounds like, as you're saying, is going into a place where you're pretty much out in the open and being almost like an obelisk and allowing people, you know what I mean, keeping that vantage point, allowing people to gravitate towards you or you kind of from them. But the whole idea of moving slowly and just being very present is the very nature of abundance, because thinking back myself, putting myself in those shoes where I would be networking and kind of unsure of myself, that was how the behavior manifested. So it manifested through being sheltered, through, I'm pretty sure, like you didn't say this, but I'm pretty sure your body language is both hands on the hips, chest out, just like really taking it all in versus, you know what I mean, hunched over with the cup in hand almost, you know what I mean? Like the body language.
Open.
Yeah, open. Exactly.
Yeah.
That
ready to receive.
Exactly. And that in and of itself is abundance, because it shows that you are confident in yourself in literally just standing there without any sort of thing for your hands, anything to divert your attention to. Because it's so interesting how just like socially, having a drink in your hand makes you feel less out of place. So that you know, that's the typical narrative. But to stand there and to know that you're abundant is understanding that you're good as you are already. It's more so how can you know, people are a bonus kind of thing. Like every experience is a bonus. And I think that's a crucial part of the abundance mindset, is understanding that everything is a bonus. I'd love for you to expand a little bit about that, bro.
You're hitting the nail on the head. And two things that came to me while you were talking about that. I want to stick with the networking analogy for a second. When you stand in the middle of the room, right, it's an environment. There's different places that you can stand in. To stand in the middle of the high traffic spot, where literally the number of people who are quote unquote forced to bump into you, is an abundant mentality, right? And the only way you can do that is if you have the confidence to take that space, right? It's about creating that space and allowing people to bump into you, right? If you do go up against the wall, how many people are going to bump into you?
Right.
Not very many. You're not creating an abundant opportunity for people to just, you know, turn, like, you know, when you're walking backwards, yeah, hey, what's up? Yeah, I'm Abundance Alex. Who are you? I'm Lack Lucy. Oh, okay, let's have a conversation. You know. So, you know, that's strategically the mindset that, you know, the mindset allows for that strategic thinking, so that you can always spot abundance in any situation that you're in any environment that you're in. You know, you create it for yourself. You see it, and then you position yourself and you create it for yourself, right? We always have a choice to create it. Abundance is always there. It's a matter if you have that lens on to see it.
I love that idea of the lens, because it's one thing that we have to understand, because I know for me, when I started experiencing the difference between lack and abundance, I thought it was more so like a switch that once you turn permanently on, you know, it's on forever. And then I would find myself in moments of lack and be like, but I thought I thought I surpassed this. I thought I was abundant now. But I love that analogy, because it's almost like it's a lens that you put on. And of course the lens can come off, you know, they can fall off. You can decide to put them in your pocket, or maybe even they just come off on their own, and then you have to remember to put those lens back on. When we find ourselves in those moments, or when you find yourself in the moments where you're not looking at things particularly with that abundance lens, what's the quickest way that you like to put on the lens, so to speak? Like, how do you, and feel free to use specific examples, because I know I gave a very vague kind of over umbrella kind of overview, but
yeah. I mean, that's a tough question for me, because you know, it does happen, right? It happens, you know, often, but I don't worry about it. That's number one, right?
Okay.
So number one is I'm not like overly concerned about the fact that I'm in a lack mindset, right? Number two is I'm extremely vulnerable about it, right? I allow my deposited abundance, right, to come back to me. And what I mean by that is by being vulnerable, by saying, you know, I'm not feeling it. I don't see it right now. You know, people can come to me and say, sure you can. What are you talking about? You've already said this to me. And then I'll remember who I am in those moments, because ultimately I'm not remembering who I am in those moments, right? I'm allowing the thoughts to take over. Right? And reminding myself that these are thoughts and that I have full control over these thoughts, and I have control over which ones I decide to run with and don't. What's beautiful is, you implant this idea of abundance on so many people in your network that they are able to lift you back up to who you are and just say, hey,
Mm.
you're abundance Alex. What are you talking about? Oh yeah, you're right, you're right.
Yeah.
So, and that allows me to not really to worry about it, right? Now, earlier you talked about something which I think is very important, and my theory on abundance is that it sits on a foundation of trust in oneself,
Mm.
right? Without deep trust in yourself and self also being source,
Right.
it's very difficult to maintain an abundance mindset, right?
Mm.
It's easy for things to come in and say, here's proof that abundance isn't here right now. Here's
Mm.
this and here's that. But when you don't allow those thoughts to take hold and to take root, right, they don't develop those neural pathways,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
They don't reinforce themselves. You decide that you're not going to believe that there is lack.
Mm.
You decide that there is abundance no matter what, because this is true. You know it to
Mm.
be true because
Right.
this is you. This is source.
Mm.
You don't have to question.
Mm. I love that idea because it brings into play the idea of nature being abundant and how nature naturally is abundant and it naturally grows anywhere that it can, right? And it's us that puts limitations. So the abundance is there. It's just when we put those limitations on ourselves and we get out of character, so to speak, disconnected from self,
Hmm.
which is, like you said, that source. I remember one time we were in Wendy's and I was telling you about this podcast that I wanted to be featured on, but I was like, I don't know. I got a little intimidated when she said that she would be challenging different opinions and stuff, and I was like, oh, I don't want to get caught with egg on my face. And you immediately did the same thing. You just shook me and said, hey, your holistic harmony hobby. What are you worried about?
The fuck you worried about?
And I really needed that shake, or in this case, to bring it back to the lens perspective, almost like a cleaning of the lens. You say, here, give me that. Hold on, cleaned it real quick, put it back on me. Yeah, give me the old spit shine, and then I was brand new. So I think community is a really important piece of that, and it's also sowing those seeds of abundance. But what do you say to people like? So I know I had this struggle in the past, right? Where I would tell family members, I would tell people like, I'm going to do great things in this world. Like I'm going to be very big, like just basically proclaiming my vision and what I wanted to do. And because of their own lack, their own perceived limitations, their own programming, they would try and dim my light and tell me to be realistic. And I know I'm not alone in that kind of endeavor. So for the people that want to kind of put those deposits of abundance into their family, into their friends, into all the people that support them, their entire support system, but maybe they might be afraid of the feedback, the negative feedback, or they've already done it and experienced that negative feedback. What would you say to them so they can maintain that positive, abundant mindset regardless of whether or not they get the support?
Yep. I love that because I hear that often, and it's
Mm.
going back to the fundamentals of what I was talking about earlier. You really need to hone in on your trust of yourself, right? It's especially if it's your parents. This is where a lot of people struggle with this, right? Is they
Mm.
have this ambition, they have this idea that they want to pursue, right? Naturally, your parents want to protect you. This is their inclination to protect you, right? To mitigate the risk that you expose yourself to.
Mm.
They don't always realize that they're putting you down. You know what I mean?
Mm.
From where they're coming from, it's from a place of protection.
Mm.
So you need to understand that, right? And you need to understand that it's time for you to stop looking for validation of your ideas and to
Mm.
trust yourself, right?
Mm.
And to say, because you can talk about your ideas and you can say, but what's important is the attitude by which you say it, right? When you claim it,
Mm.
when you proclaim it, when you really believe it, people believe you and they
Yeah.
can see it that you really believe it. So when they give you this feedback or whatever it is, like when you really believe it, it doesn't bother you. It
Yeah.
really doesn't because you're just like, you just don't see it yet,
Yeah. Exactly.
and that's fine, because when I come back, you're gonna see it. And that's what it is like how do you teach somebody or how do you convince those people? You embody the belief, embody your abundance, whatever it is that you're after to manifest. You must embody it. Simple as that.
Mm.
I say this all the time. Like I've been doing this more recently, where I've been letting everybody that I know in my circle how wealthy they look,
Yeah.
right? Because I want to mirror how I feel and have that mirrored back to me. I
Mm.
feel wealthy, but if I keep telling other people how they feel, like that they look wealthy to me, they're going to start feeling wealthy, and they're going to start saying, well, you're fucking wealthy too. And then that
Mm.
reinforces everything, right?
Mm.
And we create neural networks that go out and start shaping a belief system, although it starts small. You know my favorite video where it
Yeah.
starts small and then it starts to spill over into,
Mhm.
you know, a larger group of people, and then all of a sudden the wealth has manifested itself.
Mm. Mhm. I love that. And it reminds me of one of my favorite rappers. You would love him. His name is Larry June because his ad libs and his whole movement has started with that abundant mindset. And so he constantly reinforces to his audience, you're doing good. Like that's a part of it is like, good job, you're doing good, numbers, like that whole aspect. And it's funny because he started off by saying, nobody's going to tell you you're doing good. You have to start by saying it to yourself, right? So that was him saying it to himself on his tracks. So he'd be like, good job, Larry, you're doing good, with a very like fun kind of tone, and then now created a culture where his fans, and I went to a Larry June show where his fans are telling other fans, you're doing good,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
everyone's
exactly.
bouncing off that positive energy, and it started with him literally just saying, just giving himself a positive affirmation, making it sound cool, and now people are taking it and running with it, right?
That's abundance 101 right there.
Yeah, that's Abundance 101. I want to read a comment by brother Travis who dropped in here, and he said, I think an important piece is being undeniably in faith of self that you let go, being effortless in alignment with who you are, and that's it. And I think that's exactly what we were talking about is really like harping on that. And a lot of people are saying that, Alex, you do look wealthy. I always say you look wealthy as well.
I love you guys.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I want to I want to talk about, we established that abundance isn't just about money, but we'd be remiss if we didn't have this conversation and also talk about money. So for a lot of people, myself included, a long time ago, I had a very bad relationship with money, and I thought that people, you had to screw somebody over to get it. That, because the wealthy 1% and other people living in poverty, that it was a tool of evil and this and that. So the key being a tool of evil. Now I've just stripped it away and I understand it to be a tool. But for those people that are kind of struggling with understanding money in an abundant mind, in an abundant way, how do you define what money is? How do you look at it? What are some potent reframes? Let's just talk about money from a abundant mindset, an abundant place.
Yep. So just to let you know, I also came from a similar place, and what was interesting is although those beliefs were implanted in me, they didn't resonate with me, right? And I had always looked for a way to kind of shake that feeling off because it just didn't feel right. And in that journey of trying to shake it off, I kind of was able to redefine it and rediscover, or maybe even initially discover, like what it really was. Ultimately, money is just a representation, okay? It's symbolic of something else, right? Now, if you do a bad deed, right, you don't really get paid for it. You don't get money for it. So it's actually a terrible narrative, right? And it's easy to disprove, right? All you have to do is do something a little bad, and like you're gonna quickly realize how terrible you feel, and how your money is disappearing. Like you'll see it. So being that is a representation, of action, right? And of idea and of belief, right? Ultimately, it's boiled down to value, right? What I love about value, which most people don't understand, is that the belief is that value is some kind of like hard, fixed thing, right? That if you take a stone out of the ground, it's worth X amount of dollars,
Right.
whatever. A diamond is worth $1,000, whatever it is, right? But it's actually not that. Where the value actually lies is in the perception of what it is that you have, whether it's a tangible or an intangible, right? Literally, you could charge somebody, to laugh. People do it,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I like to give it away for free because, it's just a great thing to do,
Yeah.
But there are people out there who charge for 45-minute group laughing sessions, right? And think
Mm.
about that. Think about that.
Mm.
Can't we all do this,
Mm.
right? And all you're doing is saying, "Hey, I noticed that right now you're not doing this, and when you come near me, it's going to cost $15 to be near
Mm-hmm.
me, right? And here's what we're going to do. Okay,
Mm.
we're going to feel better. So here's $15, and you get 40 people together, and you just start laughing, and all of a sudden you're creating wealth.
Mm.
It's an exchange, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It really is an energetic exchange, and I kind of feel like that's a cliche now,
Right.
but it really is. When you're able to change the other person's perception of where the value lies, right? Or even better, have them feel where the value is, right? Through clarity. Like that's if I was to boil down how I make money through
Mm-hmm.
clarity, right? I'm
Mm.
able to clarify things for people, and
Yeah.
they weren't able to do that, and I can do it really quick, and therefore that's valuable,
Right.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I charge you for it,
Mm.
right? I don't feel bad about it, right? Because I'm
Mm.
doing something good,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's it.
Yeah, I think the part about the energy exchange is really crucial because I notice even with myself when I'm supporting a small business and they're like, "Oh, it's on the house," for whatever reason, maybe I know the guy or I'm just like really cool and they want to give me free stuff. I feel almost bad because I understand it to be that energy exchange. I'm like, "Yeah, but you gave me this, like let me support and do this because I understand it on that level." But I don't feel the same when it's like Walmart or something because it's a corporation. I feel a little different around that. But
Because, well, you think it's evil.
I would just say the profits aren't gonna hurt anybody. Like not necessarily evil, but it's just like if I drink a coconut water while I'm walking through if I drink a harmless water while I'm walking through the aisles and then I'm done with it. Like Walmart's not gonna take that much of a hit. They're not gonna lay a whole bunch of people off, because of it. But if I do that on a small business, that has much more major implications on what that could be. So I'm just airing my dirty laundry on here on Instagram Live for everybody to know. Now you guys know what I do at Walmart. But anyway, moving aside from that, I think a really great point that you made, man, was understanding that income is tied to value. And the value that you can provide dictates that income. The reason that Beyonce makes $1 million an hour, let's say, for an appearance is because there's only one Beyonce. There's only one person that can go up on that stage and do the things like she does, sing the songs the way that she does, and the fact that she's branded herself to be this person, and boom, that's her value. So it's
It's still
really
an
just
energy exchange,
exactly.
right? So every song that Beyonce has made is a story. There's a storyline in it, and that storyline evokes a chemical reaction within your body that makes you feel good, right? But the energy exchange, like break it down. The energy
Mm,
exchange is literally vibrations moving through the air,
mhm.
right? Which is energy moving that goes from her mouth, that's either recorded digitally into your ear. It moves
Yep.
through a medium, and energy literally bumps into each other and
Mhm.
exchanges, firing and wiring in your brain to release chemicals to make you feel a certain way.
Right. Right.
So when you like hone in on it, like, again, like it's it's energy exchange, it's woo woo. No, it's not woo woo. It's fucking science.
Yeah.
Like zoom in on it,
Mm,
and you can actually see it, right? And I think it's important to remove how we feel about these things. You
mm,
know what I mean? Like when we really feel these things, like when these negative feelings come in, they're narratives that we've grown up in, right?
mm.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with money. Money is very natural for human beings to exchange. We're social creatures. We're constantly exchanging ideas. It's no different than having a conversation. I mean,
Mm.
perhaps there's conversations that you feel bad about, but ultimately, like you choose how you have those conversations. Do you
Mm.
have a lot of bad conversations, or do you have a lot more better conversations? You probably have better conversations more often than bad conversations
Right.
because they feel better,
Mhm.
right? You
Mhm.
know, and the more good conversations you have, the more good conversations come to you. So yeah, you can make bad, evil money, but you can also make a shit ton more good money because that's the energy you're putting out there.
Mm. I love that. I think looking at it in that terms and kind of a detached bird's eye aerial view is really important to understanding what it is, because I think when we get in the way and have our personal stories, our personal narratives running in the way, it could, we see the world not as it is, but as we are. And so I think that's an unspoken rule when it comes to how to reframe yourself, is to drop all the past narratives that you've held around money, unlearn to relearn, and to look at it from a different perspective. There's a couple questions. So I don't know if you've actually met Eric, but Eric was the guy that helped me with budgeting. I know you guys have connected before. And so we're actually working together with my 3-month program. I helped him create a 3-month program that he's doing. Miguel, who's I believe in the chat now, he's been doing it. He's seen some amazing results. But one of the things that we first do is asking questions to measure people's relationship with money, where they are on a spectrum. And we might give them, a 1 to 10 list. And so we'll ask a question like, what was your relationship with money growing up? And so the rating doesn't necessarily fall on whether or not they had a great relationship or they don't, but more so their awareness around it. And so if they're able to say, my parents always told me that you have to work hard for money and there's no way that you can get it for free or anything like that, like them having that awareness, I would score somebody a 9 or a 10. But then we have other questions like, if you found $50 on the ground, how would you spend it? How would you feel? What would that make you feel? And that's a clear indication of what they would do in terms of, maybe they might want to invest it. Maybe they might spend it that same day. Maybe they might save it. All of that kind of gives you a glimpse into what they would do in their mindset behind it. But I also like to ask the opposite. If you lost $50, if you had $50 in your pocket, check your pocket, it's gone. What is the response that you get? And usually people will be like, well, I might be pissed at first. Some people will just say, oh, I'd be mad for the whole day. That would ruin my whole day, because it's like, man, $50. But the abundant kind of mindset to have is just like, you lost that $50. That's somebody else's blessing. Somebody else is going to grab that and going to have an amazing moment, and you can almost be happy for them in that. And that abundant mindset will bring it back to you.
Yeah, 100%. And that made me kind of think a little bit about how I might answer those questions. And I'm not much of a saver, right? Like there's money that I save, but I really don't focus on hoarding money. I honestly believe that when you focus on saving money, that you're actually coming to the table with a lack mentality, right?
I agree.
So when you understand that, you can't take it with you, money kind of flows through you, and sure, you need to have some for a rainy day for those, whatever situations that come up, that's fine. But the secret formula for me is always make more than I spend, right? And then it's just kind of there, and that's it, and it's always focusing on creating value, rather than just like, how can I keep this cash, how can I hoard this, I can't spend money on that, like blah, 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 recently my cash flow was down and I couldn't go to BRC.
Right.
I said, well, maybe you guys want to spot me. Oh, yeah, we'd love to spot you. As soon as I said that, guess what? I got all this cash that showed up, and I was like, oh, you don't have to spot me anymore. Right. Really interesting how that worked, though. Really interesting how that worked,
I love that. And it's funny because I have a friend of mine that I follow on Instagram, and he posted something like, hey, send somebody some money, man. The universe is going to bring it back to you, guaranteed, blah, blah. I was like, word. I messaged him, what's your cash app? Sent him like $33. Just didn't even ask, just send him $33, send him a nice little emoji, went about my day. And what's amazing was randomly a week or two later, I was in California and I get a random text that says, check your cash app. And he sent me $66.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's understanding that it is going to come back to you. And as you said, man, fuck, bro, I love this so much. I use it all the time. Set it and forget it.
My favorite infomercial.
Can we talk about that? Can we talk about why that's such an abundant practice when it comes to manifestation?
Yeah, it goes back to the foundations. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You set the intention and you forget it, because when you set it and forget it, you're trusting it. When you're constantly worrying about it and rethinking it and revisiting it, like you're telling the universe that you don't really believe in what you set. You set it and forget it and you move on. And you open your mind and you allow yourself to see the opportunity come towards you. You touched on nature earlier. Like if you really just sit and watch nature, right? And to be honest with you, you know how accounting came about?
Mm.
It, Accounting came about in an old town in Mesopotamia. I believe it was called Uruk. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. It's Urik, something like that. Uruk,
Look.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the guys who had goats started having a problem. The goats were reproducing and they kept multiplying, right? So they would start with 13, 14 goats and they would domesticate them and then they would mate and then they would eat some and they would give some to their neighbors, but they kept growing, you
Mm.
know? And they said, well, what are we going to do about this problem? How do we keep track of who we're exchanging with, right? Because
Mm.
they became so abundant that people said, "Hey, I need some goat hair or goat, whatever it's called. I need a goat to eat, and I've got corn or whatever they had, So they had to start counting, the natural multiplying effects of nature. Even when you plant something, you notice that you plant one and then three
Mm.
comes,
Mm-hmm.
and then from three, more and more and more and more. Nature has this way of just constantly expanding itself. Even the universe, the nature of the universe, from what we understand, is that it's in an expansion.
Right.
Being that we live in an expanding universe, right there should be enough confidence and belief that you're also expanding yourself.
Mm. Mm. Hmm. That's that's a really great point, man, because I want to bring it back even just to aging. I want to reframe aging for a lot of people. And so a lot of people might think that they're getting older and their bones are becoming decrepit and their cells are dying and whatever it is. But really, when you look at it, it is that expansive model, and our cells are regenerating. Who you are right now, take a snapshot 7 years ago, and like one day, all the cells in your body were completely different. So you're regenerating cells constantly. Your heart is regenerating cells, your liver, your kidneys, everything is constantly regenerating cells, just at a different rate. But your entire body, it takes 7 years to change all of those cells. So if you look at yourself as I'm expanding, I'm constantly regenerating, you're much more likely from that thought alone to age gracefully versus if you think of yourself as getting old, wear and tear. Like, that doesn't need to be true if you don't want it to be true. I think the power of belief is really, really huge when it comes to aging, when it comes to really everything, honestly.
Yeah, I mean it's a yin and yang, right? Nature
Mhm.
has, there's half-lives, right? So things do decay, right?
Mhm.
We know this as well, but to your point, it's where you put your focus, right?
Right.
If you're going to focus on decaying, you're likely going to decay quicker,
Mhm.
right? And you're likely not going to take advantage of the natural abundance that is right there in front of you.
Mhm.
You're just going to be in this lack mentality. Um, you know, and this reminds me of something else, talking about nature. I'll try to like bridge the 5D, 3D gap here. So there's when you look at nature, I believe it's the second law of thermodynamics, right?
Mhm.
Um, I forgot what it's called, but essentially nature is always being chaotic, right? So as soon
Mhm.
as you organize something, it starts to disorganize itself, right?
Mhm.
This is the nature of enterprise itself, right? The way you make money on this plane, in this planet, is you organize things, right? That's why it's
Mhm.
called an organization, right?
Mhm.
A corporation is an organization. And listen to the word corporation, cooperation, right?
Mhm.
It's the organizing of each other, of ideas, of value to multiply it, right? Because there's this way of being able to be more efficient when you're more organized, right?
Mhm.
And the name of the game is systems and processes. You know
Mhm.
that I talk about that all the time because that
Mhm.
allows you to stay organized and to fight
Mhm.
against the second law of thermodynamics, which states that nature is constantly looking to disorganize itself and be
Mhm.
chaotic, right? We live in a
Mhm.
chaotic universe, right?
Mhm.
When we organize, we manifest,
Mhm.
right? Even a statue or even a painting, right? You're
Mhm.
you're putting things on to make them permanent, and you're organizing the colors, and you're
Right,
doing
in
all
a
these
certain fashion.
in a certain
Mhm.
fashion so that it now means something else and represents something else, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Organization is the key to manifestation, is the key to wealth, abundance, so on and so forth. The abundance is there, but how do you capture it?
Mhm. That organization is wow. I think that comes into play when we're talking about the masculine and feminine energies, and the masculine being that container and the feminine being what roams wild, the chaos, because that's how nature, even just looking at geometrically, nature occurs in no straight lines. Like, there's nothing really that occurs in nature in straight lines. Everything's curved, everything's bent, and it's the man-made things, the organizations that are kind of that straight edge, four corners kind of thing, right? So I think that was so spot on, understanding that the abundance is there. It's all around us. It's how can we organize it in a way that allows us to take advantage of that abundance. And it's the organization that really can help you tap into it, because it's there. Mm-hmm. It's there. It's just put on the lens, and how can I organize this in a way that it makes sense?
I mean, boil it down. How many thoughts do you have in a day? A lot.
Ton.
Right? The only way you can have new thoughts is if you capture those thoughts on a piece of paper, organize them, get them out of your head.
Yeah.
So that these new thoughts come in, because otherwise what happens? The same thoughts continue to repeat, and they take up space. Yes. Mm-hmm. And you can't get these new thoughts. It's the same thing.
Yeah. That's why I'm a huge advocate, honestly, of journaling. It was one of the things that and speaking really quickly of laughter, we have Holistically Hilarious here. So she is a laughter coach, Alex. I'm so glad that she joined. She helps people basically tap into themselves through laughter. So really happy to have you here, Holistically Hilarious. Beautiful, beautiful. And I forgot the point that I was saying, but essentially... Journaling. Thank you, bro. So journaling... Yeah, huge advocate for it. It was something that I kind of knew the benefits of, but I hadn't really deployed it. And recently just deploying it as often as I can has really helped do that exact thing, is get these thoughts out and start to process them. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've been in a funk and hadn't known why, but through journaling, I slowed down the mind enough to get it on paper. And then I'm like, oh, shit, that's why. Like, that's why this is coming up. And so you can do it with somebody else asking you questions, or you can do it on your own, activating that.
Yeah, the second law of thermodynamics, right? So when you're in a funk, it's the second law of thermodynamics occurring on your energetic body, if you think about it, right? Mm-hmm. So, and how do you counteract that? It is to organize those thoughts, because they're becoming naturally, they want to be chaotic. It's just the way of the name. Call it the feminine energy of the universe, the yin and the yang. So how do you balance that with the masculine?
Beautiful, beautiful, brother. So, I think we covered mostly all of it, man. Is there anything else that you would want to touch on when it comes to abundance? I mean, just to recap everything, it's really just belief in self, really connection with self, belief in self, whether that self is you and the body that you occupy and the identity that you have, or the source, the innermost being that we all have, knowledge of that, trusting in that. And then as well, we spoke of putting on the lens of abundance. It's a lens that you view the world through, and understanding that the lens is going to get foggy. The glasses might fall down. It's a matter of putting them back on, as well as understanding that nature itself and the universe itself is abundant, it's chaotic, and it's our understanding, our organization of it, and how we organize it that allows us to tap into that abundance.
Yep. I would say for anybody who is looking to be more abundant, number one, patience. Patience is a big part of the roux. You got to have it. It's a key ingredient. It allows you to slow down and observe, right? And recently I've been talking more about seasons of life, and you do go through these ebbs and flows. It's natural. Right. It's not an issue, right? It's part of the existence of us. In those slowdowns, it's a signal to stop and observe, right? And to recalibrate, right? And find what that new direction is in your abundance, right? For whatever reason, you're out of alignment. So you need to stop and recalibrate. So observation is a big one. Number two is experimentation, right? For many years, I did not have the formula. many years. I was a searcher. I was searching, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I had the trust, right? But I hadn't identified it yet. It was still a feeling, and I knew that I had to continue on my journey.
Mm.
Um, Through action, you get the solutions, right? And action also, like I said, in the seasons, inaction also allows you to do the observing. But through
Mm.
action, you get to figure out what works for you. What works for me? What works for me is the ice, right?
Mm.
When I'm able to do cold exposure, I'm able to really calm down a lot of the noise that's just out there,
Mm.
right? And when
Mm.
the noise calms down, I'm able to be very clear and very directive in how I'm doing things, right? So definitely experiment and don't ever stop. Don't ever stop.
Mm.
Just keep going and just have that faith that you're on a path of discovery and you're going to get wherever it is that you're destined to get to.
Mm. Faith is a huge component. We have a quick question from our brother Miguelon. How
How
do I anchor the belief in myself? I'm a big fan of choosing the narratives that reinforce whatever it is that you're looking to believe. So at any given moment, whether we believe we can or can't, both are true, and we have in the tank, so to speak, two scenarios at least that prove either one. So, for example, I'm inconsistent or I am consistent. Let's just take consistency as the one overarching theme. And you can either believe you are consistent or believe that you are not. What I always say is there are stories, there are narratives that are running in your head that prove either or. There's going to be stories that you can reach down into and remember when you weren't consistent. When you told yourself you were going to lose 5 pounds, but on the second day you said, screw it, I'll try again next week. There are moments where you wanted to make the volleyball team and you practiced for 2 days and then you didn't, whatever it is. There are narratives that will prove either one. Now, for me, the key is to remember those narratives that reinforce what it is that you want to achieve. So just like there were moments where you were inconsistent, there are also moments in which you prove to yourself that you were consistent. Whether it's, creating the eating log or with somebody and just like constantly, there are stories that prove that. And constantly asking yourself, okay, what proves this? What was a time in my life when I was consistent or I did do this or that? And then once you start to stack those up, then it's like, oh yeah, no, yeah, okay, what am I worried about? And then you take action from that inspired place, and now you have another little one that you can throw into the piggy bank, and then that adds. And so it's really deciding not to buy into the other narrative, which are true. They're both true, but it's like which one are you replaying in your head over and over again? That's the
Yeah.
number one way for me to really anchor in more belief into yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And just to add to it, for me, I think it's the narrative, but the narrative is usually contained by the question, right?
Mm.
And I say this all the time, like, how do you solve a problem? First, you have to frame it with questions, right?
Mm.
You must define the problem. So what's the question that I always love to ask myself? That question is, Alex, am I being myopic, right?
Mm.
To your example, I am consistent, right? But if I'm being inconsistent for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever, right? And I'm focusing on that short sample size of that inconsistency within that 4 weeks, how does it appear? What does the narrative ultimately become? That I'm
Mm.
inconsistent. It's been 4 weeks. I've got a lot of proof that I've been inconsistent in this past 4 weeks. First
Mm.
question, am I being myopic? Oh yeah, I am being myopic. Let me zoom out 6 months. How have I
Mm.
been in 6 months? Oh, well, it turns out in 6 months, I've only been inconsistent for a 4 week streak. Fuck,
Mm.
I'm fucking consistent as hell. Let me fucking snap out of this bitch?
Right, right.
So it's a good question that I always like to ask myself. I find that more often than not, we're being myopic. I think it's this. I think it's part of our nature
Mm.
to only see what's necessarily like right in front
Right
of
in front
us.
of us. Mm-hmm.
Perhaps with our attention span continuing to shrink due to all these things,
Mm-hmm.
that we're becoming more myopic, and perhaps that's why depression is becoming more prevalent. But when you zoom out and you look at the holistic sample size, for me,
Mm-hmm.
33 years, I can
Mm-hmm.
say in 33 years, I've been abundant as fuck because every single day I keep renewing and I'm still fucking breathing. That's
Mm.
abundance right there. You know what I mean? Um, we didn't even talk about the breath.
Oh, we didn't talk about the rest. Let's get into it. Thanks for your
The
question,
breath.
Miguel. One last thing about that is getting yourself a community of people that will mirror back at you your belief because they believe in themselves. And
Mm.
I mean, Miguel, you got it. You're staring at your mirrors right now. But for anybody that doesn't have that yet, getting that community is such a crucial component because, like you said, in those moments where you feel down on yourself, they reflect back. It's like, hey, remember this? It's like, oh yeah, snap out of it, boom.
Yep.
So
And how do you find the community? You continuously take action. You search,
exactly.
you search, you search. I mean, like I by whim, like I bumped into you guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it wasn't planned. It just happened. And when it did happen, I was able to connect the dots. You know what I mean?
exactly. It was planned, but just not by us.
Not by us, exactly. 100%. 100%.
But yeah, no, that brings a good point. It was really just us being us. Like we
Yeah.
just said, hey, this is what matters to me, and I'm showing the world. And only when we did that did we start to align. It's just like, hey, you care about that, I care about that. Like
Yeah.
boom, you know what I mean? And
Exactly.
that's how that happens.
And trusting ourselves, right? Like I
Right.
didn't have to trust you guys because I trusted me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like how can I get in trouble if I trust myself? What's gonna happen here? What's the worst that's gonna happen? I can trust myself. I'll know if I have to walk away. Like I will know
Mm.
these things, so I trust myself so I can take more opportunity and take more risk that way.
Yeah, that's huge, man. So let's talk about the breath because the breath is really the one thing that sustains us. And if we're talking about abundance is just understanding everything else as a bonus, you can't get more everything else as a bonus except, you know what I mean, outside of the breath. So let's talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, and this is the yin and the yang, right? Like don't be too myopic, but also be super myopic, right? You get when you really zoom in on it, it's the breath, right? You count the number of breaths that you've had in your life. Like it's the one thing that's the constant in your life that you
Hmm.
constantly have access to. Nobody can take it away from you. You can be in and out, in and out. So in those moments of lack or whatever, you can come back to your breath, and the breath will remind you of your abundance. It will increase your awareness, right? Um, Through some breathwork modalities, you can literally expand your energy field and you can
Hmm.
feel the expansion of your energy field, right? When your
Hmm.
energy field expands, it affects I don't know if it is your aura, if it affects your aura, I don't know all the details, but other people can feel it, like quite
Hmm.
literally. You know what I mean? It's all energy, really.
Yeah, 100%. And for anybody that's watching that does not know our friend Devon, the Black Airbender, he's a perfect example of somebody who is living abundantly as fuck because he simply doesn't need much. He doesn't need much. And so it's funny because you said all he does is breathe and make content and get
Yeah,
presented
seriously.
with amazing opportunities. And it's because he values the breath so much and everything else is a bonus. So it's like, oh, cool. Yeah, okay. I guess I'll do that. Yeah, that sounds dope. But it's not
Right.
like I need this because all he really needs and he understands that all he really needs is the breath. And so when he really just dives into that completely, everything else is just like, oh wow, this is amazing. It's almost euphoric for him because
Yeah.
everything is just like an amazing bonus and he gets a lot of bonuses.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. And to take it 5D, 3D again, right? So like how does the breath like actually put money in your pocket? In a lot of different groups, I guess you could say, some of these business groups, the biggest piece of value that I can bring to all of them is bringing awareness to their breath, right?
Yeah.
There is a lot of anxiety in the business world, right?
Mhm.
For multiple reasons, production, fucking, social anxiety, so on and so forth, right? I found that simply reminding people to breathe allows them to move through these things. I've used it myself.
Mm.
I've had to walk into meetings with decision makers, and I felt very anxious walking into it. Being
Mm.
cognizant of that feeling, I wanted to neutralize it, right?
Mm.
So what I would do is get into the breath. Typically in my car or on the subway, or even if I have to stand outside the building, get into the breath, take the 7, 8, 9 breaths. If I can take it up to, 30 and I have the time, great, and really align my energy so that when I walk in with that presence. That
Mhm.
presence communicates trust,
Mhm.
credibility, experience, all kinds of things that I can't communicate with words. Because as soon as I start talking about all these things, I start diminishing all of it,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm. Mm. That's that's so potent, man. That really is so potent because one quote that comes to mind is a Soren Kierkegaard, who was a philosopher. He said, "To defend is to discredit." So when you start to defend yourself, you're actually discrediting yourself, and so you want your energy to speak volumes more than you have to explain yourself. And so tapping into the breath is a really great way for you. I mean, literally speaking, like you said, it does affect your aura because when you're breathing more, you're getting more oxygen into the red blood cells, your blood is flowing more efficiently, your cells are vibrating more, and then so literally your aura is pushing out, and people can feel that, people can see it, people can, it's almost tangible. And so you want to communicate those little intangibles in a way that doesn't have to be through speech, because this
Yep.
already is a rudimentary form of communication. There are better, more efficient ways of communicating, and body language, like trust in oneself, like all of those things. Whenever we start to do this, and things get lost in translation.
Yeah,
But
right.
go ahead, go ahead.
It's in that feeling, right? When you start to move away from your alignment and stop trusting yourself in that moment, those feelings start to bubble up. And even if you are credible, even if you do know what you're talking about, like these things just they signal, they're heuristics that say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. So yes, you fuck yourself, or you shoot yourself in the foot, in the end of the
Mhm.
day. And even in just having conversation and just taking the moment in between ideas, I think you and I are both super cognizant of this and like figuring out what are those like ums and
Yeah.
uhs that we
Yeah.
have in our speech, and finding that moment to and
Exactly.
exactly, get rid of it so that we can be more precise and more intentional with our communication. Because when we are more intentional, we are literally firing and wiring neurons in other people's minds
Mhm.
and literally biologically changing them to create physically manifest belief systems and anchoring those things in people's bodies,
Mm.
right? That ultimately
Mm.
turns into other sorts of manifestations in reality. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Ideas are incredibly potent. When you really
Mhm.
start to think about ideas and how they work exactly like viruses, be
Mm.
cognizant of those things, right? When you have these bad ideas are a virus.
Mm.
Okay, you've caught a virus. This is not yours. This is not part of you. You can heal yourself from this bad idea, from this bad
Mm.
belief system, from this thing that's not in true alignment with where you're going, who you are, or whatever, right?
Mm.
Um, we heal that through hot and cold exposure.
Yeah.
We're literally able to remove these things from us and focus our intention more and change the feeling, right? And the feeling anchors these new belief systems literally physically in our minds.
Mm. That's huge, bro. When it comes to communication as well, communicating slowly, effectively, and efficiency is a practice of abundance. And I'll explain why. We're taught to communicate things as fast as possible because other people have to speak and you are no more important than anybody else. So it's just like, let me get it all out and then boom. And as a result, we might trip over our words. We may word vomit. But when you take your time and know that what you have to say is valuable and you have people almost hanging on your word, it creates that sense of abundance, and then you get to deploy that on a regular basis. But you have to understand that what you have to say is valuable and that you don't have to rush through a point, because for me, at least in the past, it was, let me throw everything out on the table because some things going to stick, some things aren't. So I want to load people with as much information as possible, as opposed to, which is kind of lazy. It's almost lazy. It's not really putting yourself in the position of the person that you're talking to and saying, what does this person need to know most? It's just
Hmm.
they need to know all of it and they can kind of pick it apart themselves. but in that, people lose themselves and they might not be present because you just thrown so many things at them. You could say the word toaster and it reminds them that they might have left their toaster on, and now they're not present in that conversation anymore until they realize, oh wait, this guy's talking, I have to tune back in. So taking your time, slowly communicating things, being very intentional with every word is a measure of abundance.
Hmm. Yeah, and waiting for the right moment to strike as well. And that's where the patience come in. And you can't be lazy, right? Because like you said, being lazy is just getting it out now, right? But when you are able to see that you have their attention, now is the time to impregnate.
Mm. Mm. I love it, man.
And on that, it's over.
So with that, I want to thank you, Alex, for jumping on, my brother. Always always a great
me.
pleasure, man. Talking with you. We'll lick brains after this. You know what I mean?
100%.
But 100%. Thank you guys for tuning in. Real quickly, I wanted to say, Alex, if people do want to work with you in whatever capacity, what do you have available for them? How can they get in contact with you? Give us your spiel.
Yep, I'm working on a couple projects right now for 2021, but ultimately everything's falling under branding and marketing. Primary offer that I have for everybody is a semi-custom WordPress site that allows you to get yourself on there and out and blog onto the internet and get the attention that you deserve. And for those who are still having trouble consolidating what it is that they stand for, what it is that they believe, I offer branding consulting as well. And those are my two flagship offers. If you need to get in touch with me, you can get at me here on Instagram. I am Alex Ike. I'm on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website, getqualified.com. I've got a Calendly link that you can schedule with me over there, and we can jump on a call, jam out, and see if we're a right fit to work with one another.
Sounds good, my man. Sounds good. Awesome, brother. Any last statements, man? I think we crushed it, knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, last statements is for all the tribe in the chat. Monday, BRC, be there.
I'll be there, actually. Yeah, Monday.
Yeah.
And Miguel, if you're still here, do not go tomorrow. I was just talking to Brian. He said it's going to be absolutely full. It's like their busiest days of the week.
I believe it.
Year.
I was there yesterday. It was packed, dude.
Yeah. So Monday, I'll see you there, bro.
It's a pleasure. Love you.
Love you too, my man.
Thank
you guys for tuning in. Peace.
Peace.